Okay, guys, welcome back to the Pulling Curls podcast. Today on episode 93, I kind of got some bad news. We're in counseling. Let's untangle it. Welcome to the Pulling Curls podcast. I'm Hillary, your curly-headed host on the podcast where we untangle everything from pregnancy, parenting, and home routines. I want you to know that there are no right answers for every family, and I find that simplifying my priorities is almost always the answer. It's tangled, just like my hair. Okay, before we get started, could you make sure and leave a review? It means so darn much when you guys leave us a review, and it really helps our podcast get seen. I mean, we are revealing like all of our deepest, darkest secrets today. So leave a review. Thanks. Okay, did I get you with that intro? I have to say that when I told a few friends that we were going to counseling, I always backed it up with we're not getting divorced or anything. We just feel like we could use a little help. So in January, I was coming up with my goals for the year, and I just knew that having a stronger, happier marriage was going to be one of my goals, because I'm not going to lie and say that 2020 wasn't rough on the old marriage. Drew and I worked together, and then we were together all the time. He did not teach for his college this semester because there was decreased enrollment. It was a lot of together. And it was a lot of me also pivoting and shifting a lot of things and not communicating that very well. I don't know if that ever happens to you. So I came downstairs to his office and I was like, hey, I think we should go to counseling. And he was kind of like, what? Because at the time we were really in a good place, but I think everyone could use a little bit of counseling. And we actually found a way that was cheaper than we thought it was going to be. And we found like it was really great. So I want to introduce today's guest, my husband, Drew Erickson. Are you overwhelmed by all there is to do around your house? As a new mom, I felt overwhelmed at every turn. Fortunately, I turned to systems to make a change. Whether it's mornings, dinner time, or even just to climb out of a pile of kids' clothes, my course Family Routines can save you. I hold your hand as we smooth out these rough patches, making every day easier so we can more easily handle when your preschooler tells you they can use their urine like a lightsaber. Parenting is always going to be a wild ride. Routines are just your seatbelt, and they can support you. Use coupon code UNTANGLED to save 15% at checkout. Link in the show notes. Hey, Drew, welcome back to the Pulling Curls podcast.
Good morning. It's a pleasure as always.
Yeah, such a fine guest. Okay, so Drew and I did marriage counseling.
Yes, we did.
What did you think when I came into the office and I was like, hey, I think we should go to counseling?
I thought, is there some problem that I'm not aware of that we need to go? But then when we started talking about it, then it made more sense and I was more on board with it.
Were you initially hesitant?
No, I was just kind of wondering where it was coming from. And then after we talked about kind of New Year's resolutions and getting kind of things on a new start, then that made a lot more sense to me. And I thought it was a good idea.
I only have good ideas, Drew.
Okay.
Okay, so we decided we were going to go to counseling, but then I looked through a bunch of online platforms because we were still in the middle of COVID. We definitely weren't up for going to a counselor. Honestly, we didn't know any counselors around us.
I mean, truth be told, we are pretty pro online courses.
Yes.
But
we were looking around. I figured we'd just go to a counselor on the interwebs, right? Like a telehealth type counselor thing. And I was looking, and that probably would have been in the 2000-ish range, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. In looking at it a little bit further now, we probably could have done 2 months of counseling, which only would have been like 8 sessions for $500-ish. So not crazy.
Yeah. But I think the solution that we found was actually probably among the best solutions that we found.
Yeah. So we ended up I was just Googling around for quite a while. Like I looked for a while and I found the Our Relationship course, not sponsored by them. In fact, I asked them to come on and they never responded. Tiny podcast, I guess. Anyway.
Who knows? Maybe someday in the future.
So we chose this Our Relationship course. It is a course that you can do. I think it was $50 when we were looking. And you can also add on a marriage coach for another $100.
Right.
Which we thought was a great bargain, that we could at least try this and maybe find out what our big problem was. And then if we still needed counseling after that, we could take it to the next level.
Yeah, there was a counseling option available with their program also, wasn't there?
No, what we got was the coach.
No, I understand that. I thought we had that there was an option to also have one of the counselor head people that you could talk to as well if needed.
No.
Okay.
So we paid $150 at the time. That gave us access to the course, which you have to do, it's self-paced. So if you have an issue with staying up with online things, then this probably isn't the option for you. But it probably took some weeks, like up to 3 hours probably in the course for each of us, right?
Yeah, no, there was quite a bit of detail in terms of going through some things yourself and kind of coming up with not necessarily a strategy for how to answer the questions or strategy for how to talk to your spouse, or to the other person in your couple, but just kind of make you think about what it is that was really at the core bothering you about whatever topic you were working on.
Yeah. So in that course, you each come up with what you think one of your biggest problem is, at least the problem you want to address. And Drew and mine was pretty similar, which you guys, this is going to be a big shock. It was communication. So I'm pretty sure that that's most people's biggest problem.
Yeah.
Although there are bigger problems, but that wasn't ours. That was communication's ours.
Well, and watching some of the videos that were provided by the course, there were clearly other couples that had done this course or that had done some counseling with the group that started this program that had come with much bigger issues. And that's kind of why they started it off, I think, was to try and allow some of those couples that may not have had quite as big of issues, an outlet to kind of work on it on their own and see if that could alleviate some of the problem, but also give them some tools to kind of help out as well.
Yeah. So you meet with your counselor like 3 times during the course, which is nice because it does give you kind of a deadline because you're like, oh, we need to meet with her on Tuesday, which means we need to finish this module this week. But there was some flexibility with scheduling. It was good to get through it. And I think having the coach helped. Now, having the coach, she just kind of goes through it with you and she gives you a lot of positive feedback, I felt like. Didn't you feel like, Drew?
Yeah, I know. I thought she was a great person to have on our team, kind of a third-party observer, just seeing how things were going, kind of checking in with us, not necessarily giving counseling advice per se. She did give some advice and some tips and things of that nature, but it was more, how are you doing on working on the things that you've decided to work on? And that's one of the things that I actually liked about the course and about our choosing to do the course was that I think all of us as couples have things that we need to work on, even if our relationship is fantastic. When we get down to the nitty gritty, we really do find that there are things that we could be doing to make our relationship or our communications a little bit better. And that was one of the things that we found as we were working on communication was that there were certain assumptions that both of us were making about what the other person was thinking that were not correct. And those assumptions were kind of getting in the way of our being able to communicate freely and have a more open relationship.
Yeah. So the girl that coached us, it looks like all of them are in school to be either counselors or marriage and family counselors or some type of that thing. So I think the course is run by professors. And then I think they're giving their students this opportunity to coach in addition to it, which is probably why it's so well priced because it was a great price for what we ended up getting, I felt like.
Absolutely. Considering some of the other kind of counseling services that we've talked about in the past in terms of hourly rate, it was significantly cheaper and was an opportunity for us to, again, kind of really get at some of the core issues with a little bit of outside observance. And I would say if they are students, they've got to be grad students. It's not somebody who's working on a bachelor's degree in marriage and family counseling that's talking to you. It's somebody who's actually...
No, they're on their way to be doing counseling, which you can't do with just a bachelor's.
Right. So it's either a master's degree or a doctorate. I believe it would be a doctorate, but
yeah, I don't know what she was getting. But the reality is a lot of what I think they do in therapy is just kind of letting you work on your conversation, which this course really guides you through. Like it literally has a color for what I'm supposed to talk about, and then you switch to a color for what Drew's supposed to talk about so that you're having these conversations, without having to pay for a therapist, which is probably what we would have had in a therapist's office either way.
And I'd set it up in such a way so that in a virtual standpoint, it makes it so it's easier for each person of the couple to have a very clear distinction of when it is their opportunity to sit back and be the listener and when is the time to be the speaker and bring up things that they are wanting to address.
Yeah. And they definitely use the speaker listener scenario where you're like, we did this in nursing school, but where you're saying, what I hear you saying is that you think my hair is too curly. And then Drew goes, yes, I think your hair is too curly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
your genetic predilections to the contrary.
So how do you think it helped us, Drew?
I think it helped us in terms of being able to talk about some of the backstory that we may not have known before for both of us. It brought some of those conditions to light so that we were able to actually put some of the surface emotions to the side and actually get to some deeper issues, some deeper understanding, as the course would call it.
Yeah. I think the thing is we both knew we were assuming things about the other person, but we weren't taking the time to find out what we were assuming. And so maybe we were guessing at some of the things we were assuming, but that was kind of what I got out of it, is it helped us to just really take the time to dig a little deeper and to hear the other person out. And it also made that whole speaker listener conversation a little bit easier, because it can be really awkward initially if you've done it before.
Yeah.
And now we're able to do it maybe with our kids or with each other without it being as awkward, because we've kind of found our rhythm with it.
Right. And I think in terms of any downside of the course, that was the only thing that I could really come up with, was that initial awkwardness, and having some of the conversation and going through some of that process was a little bit awkward, but that was the only really downside.
Yeah. It also helps for other issues. So if our issue wasn't communication, if our issue was more like parenting, or I don't remember what the other ones were, you can go through some of those other helps. So Drew and I are doing that on our own time now, because I don't know how long we have access for the course, but for right now, we're using the helps that they have so that we can go through maybe other issues that could crop up, or smaller issues in our relationship.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that I really liked about it, is that they get you to focus on one particular issue, one particular thing, and start there, but they give you access to the library of other things, so that if you want to start a new subject and work through that as a couple, you can go through that with the other library of resources that they have, or just do some more research and a little bit more reading and through some of the articles and studies, things that they have available, so that you can work through other things as a couple. It's not something that you finish the one thing and you're done. You can actually use it, continue to use the process to help through other things.
Yeah. One of the things I actually really liked about it is it helped me realize that maybe things that I thought were a big problem actually aren't that big of a deal, because they were like, how frequently does this come up? And we were like, I don't know, like once, maybe twice a month. And the options were like once a day, once a week, once, and I was like, wow, once a day. No, we definitely don't fight that often. I mean, I could fight that often because I'm a fighter, but
okay.
But also I thought like our therapist was like brought up a lot of the good points in our relationship, which I think was really good to focus on the positive things rather than dwelling on the negative things. I really like that part of it as well.
Yes. And I really liked being able to take some of those skills and include that for the communication stuff in our communications with our children, because that has helped. The only difficulty there is that we've both gone through it, so we know what to expect from each other in the process of doing this communication side of things. But sometimes in talking with our children, they haven't. And so it's very easy to slip into old bad habits because the other person is not following along with the pattern as they're supposed to, because they don't know what the pattern is.
Yeah. Anything you didn't like about that?
The only thing that it was just a little awkward and uncomfortable when we were first getting into the communication side of things. And I think it was very transferable in terms of talking with our children. I have gotten a lot better about talking with our kids and not letting some of my surface emotions get in the way. It still happens. And that was one of the other things that I really liked about the end of the course of them making the point that some of these things might still be an issue. We're just giving you the tools to help it be less of an issue, and you will get better at it as you go on through time and get better at practicing what you've learned here.
Yeah. And they do a couple follow-ups, which is nice. So you meet to follow up about how things are going with a problem that you're having, which is nice because I think it's real easy to be like, okay, we're going to fix it. And then the follow-ups are really important to tweak and adjust your system.
Yeah. And I think that helps also in terms of even just, again, going back to communicating with our children. It helps us in communicating not just between us as a couple, but communicating as parent to child relationship, or even as with our more adult to adult kind of relationship, as that moves out of child to parent relationship, but from one adult to another, and really having kind of more deep conversations with them as they get older.
Yeah. Anything else you've noticed after doing it?
No, I start to notice things in my conversations with my parents that I find myself either able to get them to open up about things a little bit more than maybe they would have before. I do find that has been a little bit more helpful in that regard.
Yeah, I think I noticed that things that I probably would have felt like too awkward, like one of our goals is for me to bring up a topic so that you have some time to think about it before I jump into or down your throat, as you might say. And so I can say, and I probably would have found this too awkward before, but now I can say, hey, I want to have a discussion about XYZ. When would you like to do it? And sometimes you are like, let's do that later. Or sometimes you're like, let's just talk about it now.
Yeah.
But at least I've given you that option of, when do you want to talk about it versus, we're talking about it now. And I've already got my 16 points written down in my mind. So you're screwed because I'm going to win this conversation.
Right. It definitely takes some of the antagonism out of it in terms of my side of things. Just that kind of understanding where each other is coming from. I have really appreciated you taking more time and giving me a little bit more time to think about it rather than jumping into it. Because like you say, if you've got a whole list of things and I haven't even thought about the issue, then I'm automatically on the defensive because I have no idea what's coming at me.
Yeah. So I really liked it. I would recommend it for anybody. It's a great price. You could do it without the coaching. If the coaching really stretches your budget, I don't think that it's required, but it was really helpful. So if you can pull that $100 out of somewhere else, I would definitely recommend the coaching as well.
At that price point, it is well worth the time, the hour, the 3 hours or whatever it takes to get from 1 week to the next week. In terms of the time that's invested into it, it is well worth the amount of money that you're going to put into it, as opposed to how much money you would spend on true traditional therapy at the cost rate that the same amount of time would run you.
Yeah. So there you go, everybody. Marriage counseling 101.
And it was, again, I think our relationship's in a much better place as a result of that.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Drew.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tolerating me jumping down your throat for the last 25 years. Almost 25, right?
Almost 25, yeah.
The math is too hard. Once you hit 20, the math's too hard. Okay, guys, I hope you guys found it helpful. We really loved marriage. I mean, it was kind of like marriage coaching. It was not a life coach. It was an actual, it was a girl that was in school for therapy, but it was written by marriage and family therapists. So yeah, totally legit, real cheap, but totally helped us out. And I have to say that after I finished marriage counseling, I decided that I needed a little counseling too. So I'm going an online program. We will have an update on that one in the coming months because I'm currently still anxious about things. So yeah, but things are good. Things are great. We can always make things better, especially in marriage, right? Is it just me? Marriage is hard. Guys, I don't want you to think that I don't think that marriage is hard, but a little help can never hurt, right? Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope we helped smooth out a few of the snarls in your life. We drop an episode every Monday, and we always appreciate it when you guys share and review. Until next time, we hope you have a tangle-free day.